Welcome to Gita Wisdom. I'm your host, Joshua Greene.
Welcome, one and all. This is the 16th year, I believe, of gatherings under the rubric of Gita Wisdom, Gita referring to both the Sanskrit wisdom text Bhagavad Gita, but also Gita in the sense of call. The word Sanskrit Gita refers to a call. It's often translated as a song, but a song in the sense of a hearkening to others to come and join in the discussion. So it's the call to the community of like-minded souls to come together and discuss the points of tangency between the theory and practice of wisdom traditions, contemplative modalities, and the real practical everyday world that surrounds us. It's especially rewarding that this first gathering of the year features Krishna Lila. In your promotional material, you probably read her biography. Let me just reiterate it for you. For 25 years, Cristina Casanova was Assistant Director of Guidance for the New York City Department of Education with a focus on crisis management and family therapy. She teaches in the Department of Applied Psychology at New York University. And for the past 40 years, she's been a practitioner of Bhakti or devotional yoga and integrates the wisdom teachings from traditional texts, such as the Gita, into her approach to therapy. I have, in the interest of full disclosure, I've known Cristina, 23 years, something like. We were in short pants and we were in knickers running around when we first met. I don't know how long ago it was, but it was a long time ago. I received my mediation training from Cristina. So it's there's a personal friendship here as well as a professional one. She's been my guest previously for Gita Wisdom discussions about this intersection between principles on the cutting edge of psychotherapy and family dynamic therapy and spiritual practices. Let me just begin with a little bit of housekeeping. Gita Wisdom is a listener-sponsored series of programs. We do accept donations to cover costs through Venmo or PayPal to the email address joshua@strmedia.com. joshua@strmedia.com. We have opened the chat box. You are most welcome to send in any questions you have at any point along the way. We'll try to get to everyone in the course of our time here with Cristina. We are recording. Several people have asked, are we recording this session? Yes, it is being recorded. It will be edited and uploaded to YouTube and made available also as an audio podcast. So that information will also be made available to you. I'd like to start with just a little bit of a story to get us going here. I lived in ashrams for 13 years, Cristina, as you are aware, starting as a young lad in London in 1969. And at that time, there were people, young men coming back from Vietnam. One fellow who arrived in the ashram where I was staying in London had been a machine gunner in Vietnam. And he was troubled by so many conflicting emotions, a real problem with authority. So, you know, when you're in an environment that is attempting to cultivate a love for divinity and, you know, the supreme authority, and if you've been dealing with brutal, deadly authorities in war, there are issues that can arise. At one point, the head of the monastery where I was staying, the head of the ashram, said, let's bring him to a therapist. And I remember as a young boy, I was 19 years old, and here we were taking this person to see a therapist. Now, I had been to therapy myself when I was younger, so it was not a big mystery to me. But I was kind of headstrong. I was in that mood of, just follow the spiritual path and everything will be resolved. And at some point in the discussion, the therapist very graciously, generously allowed me and the ashram president to be present with him when he talked with this fellow. And I remember getting heated, just heated under the collar. Why are we doing this? Why don't we just bring him back? He doesn't need psychobabble, and Freud and Jung and all of this stuff. What he needs is more sangha, prashadam. He needs more chanting of mantras. That's what's going to bring him around. And I remember the ashram president, who was older than me and had been on the front lines with Martin Luther King during the freedom marches in the South, and was a wonderful, kind-hearted soul, saying to me, one day when you're older, you'll come to appreciate the value of therapy. And that story, that recollection came to mind in October when my mom died at the age of 95. And I was shocked by the explosive emotion that released in me. And that's when I called you and we started weekly sessions, and bless you for being there. You've been so important for me in this period. And it made me very thoughtful. The points of tangency, call it the points of tangency between the material self and the spiritual self, the external world and the internal world, the workings of the mind and the workings of the heart, or the workings of the spirit. And I'm delighted that we can have this discussion with you. By the way, to those of you who are with us this afternoon, who are just joining, please take advantage of the chat box to send in your questions. We'll pick them up throughout the course of our time together. So don't wait for the end. Just send your questions in whenever you like. So Cristina, I'd like to start just by asking you, what is therapy? What do you do? I mean, are you a classical therapist? Are you grounded in the Vienna schools? And do you see people motivated by, the sexual impulse? Is that who we are? Are we the collection of our lifetime of traumas? Or are you bringing in a different perspective? Tell us about how you practice therapy.
I have a long life, and I have been studying since I think I was always. So right now it's very integrative way. I found to trauma therapy that, I studied with Freud in the usual, and I was never getting well. I got to a wall. I remember going to the best psychiatrist in New York, Dr. Tershakovic. I never forgot him. And he would sit there, and I would talk, and he would say nothing. And finally I said, look, I have a degree in psychology from Columbia University. I know that what I'm doing doesn't work, and I keep on doing it. I need to know why. I need to stop. And he said, you'll stop when you stop. That cost a lot of money. And in a way, he was right. And there was and then I ended up, the amount of suffering and desperation took me to a workshop that I didn't really want to go, but I decided to go. It was Shakti Wayne visualization. And I remember going there in the village, Omega Institute in the village. And I remember the first thing she said is close your eyes. And as a good intellectual and a person that never closed her eyes, because that's trauma. You got to look for what's going to happen next. Right from the background I came, I closed my eyes and she said, what picture comes to mind? And the picture of a slave with like the prisoners with a ball on her ankles. And I was freed. That was so cool. So to me, and it was a 2-day workshop, Saturday and Sunday, and she gave us homework for the next day. We spent the whole day about intuition while images were coming. So she said, talk to that voice inside of you at least 100 times from Saturday to Sunday. And as a good student, I sat on the A train from the Omega Institute to my house. That was like 50 minutes. So I sit and I close my eyes and I say, hello, inside of me. Where are you? Where have you been all my life? Like I needed to talk to somebody. Where is somebody that can help me? And actually a voice answered. And in my mind, I thought the whole New York City heard it. And the voice said, I was here all the time, my dear, but you were out. And when I got home, I looked in the mirror and I saw myself for the first time. I said, wow. So I eventually almost understood everything. I started reading, that was the New Age time. I started reading everything about karma, this, that, and beginning to understand, a lot more than the psychological part of suffering. So I went to Dr. Tershakovic, who had given me a reduction in price. And I said, I'm done. Now I get it. Does that make sense? Now I really understand at least why. And he said, really? Come for free and explain to me. What did you get? Anyway, so that gave me the insight that there was more on heaven and earth, Horatio, than your philosophy, right? And I said, that's very interesting. Makes sense. And so slowly, incidents like this kept on happening to me, and proving that this phrase, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, is so true. So body worker came into my life, and I don't know if you want me to keep on telling this story or you stop me when.
Look, we're gonna. There's no script here. We're gonna play fast and loose today.
Okay.
Because I'm fascinated by everything you have to say. I'm already asking questions like, who was that inner voice you found? And were you able to actually translate terms from clinical psychology to the Sanskrit karma and so on? I mean, I'm filled with questions, but
yes,
go on
yes,
telling as much of the story as you want.
So I'm going to jump into the most important thing. So just to show you how, in a way, my journey was not intellectual, but was intuitive in a sense, without even knowing what I wanted. which already all of that at the end with family constellations. I mean, when I was doing it, I was not really knowing why, but things were really working out. I found that I was out, so I had to be in, whatever that meant. So that was nice. So I enrolled in a workshop that was Summer Camp for Your Brain, because that's another great intellectual workshop to attend. But it turned out that it was more like those camps that you go into the trees and they make you jump from one tree to another. I have walls and you have to solve them by jumping over the wall. And I was like almost 40 years old. I said, what the hell is this? But anyway.
We used to call them encounter groups or tea groups or something.
Well, these were professional people. They were a whole bunch of French people who study the brain. But they were really teaching you that you don't have to think through things, that the body knows how to solve a problem.
Okay,
right?
That's an important point. You've been telling me that from the very first session we had after my mother died, that the explosive emotion was something that was living in the cells of my body.
Yes.
These memories of, look, she was a single parent. I was her only child. We grew up together in a small apartment. She was my best friend. I loved her more than anyone in the world. There were responsibilities, feelings of guilt that came with her never having a husband at home.
Mm-hmm.
A child thinks, I guess that's my fault, right? But we suppress this. One of the things that I remember so vividly from the first few sessions you and I had was you describing for me that the body knows, in a small child, those kinds of deeply upsetting experiences like the divorce of parents, and so child doesn't know how to deal with those emotions, so the body suppresses them.
Right, and it's a script. It's like it's there. If it's not, I mean, if the lucky child has a good art therapist or enlightened people, schools or anything that understand that, but at that time probably children weren't seen or heard, and so nobody really paid attention to that. But we have scripts that are, even when we are born, we come with scripts already.
What kind of a script could we come with when we're born? I mean, how is that?
Two kinds. One from the ancestors, epigenetics, right? Like, for example, the Holocaust, or scripts of suffering or guilt or things that come. And the way you are born says something. And recently, one of the greatest therapists of birth trauma just died, Raymond Castellino. And I worked with him like 8 times. It was really fascinating. And I went there was a client of mine that was a psychiatrist. A client. I hate to call him a client. He's a friend. I don't have clients. I don't, but, and finally.
Anyway, everybody here, you've just learned the most important part about Cristina Casanova. She doesn't set herself up as everyone.
No, this is very important. We are all equal. And we are partners in discovering something, because, and the knowledge is really the intelligence that surrounds us. Call it the great power or whatever you want to call it. There is an intelligence that guides us. I'm sure of that. Put my hands on it. Not because I think so, it's because I lived it.
Whoa. So explain what that means, that you lived it.
Well, I'm telling you that I pick up this pamphlet, Samarkand for the Brain. And my mission was, I have to understand why I'm suffering, right? So that's why I went to school. That's when I went to Dr. Tershakovic. And so I registered Samarkand for your brain. They're going to do exercises. And so I learned something important, two incredible things there. With all the exercises, like there was a wall and we had a wall with nothing on it, and there were a group of 10 people and we had to go over the wall. And every time we had one of those challenges, my mind said, I can't do that. Impossible. I cannot. I don't do exercise. Oh, I could never do this. I ended up doing it over and over again. Wow. Even at the end, I was able to cut a block. Those blocks the Zen masters cut with the hand? That was the...
You did that?
Then I did that, and I have the wood to show you.
You kept the pieces. That's good.
I kept the pieces in 40 years because to me, I'm not kidding. And he said, you could do, everybody can do it. And again, my mind, after the 7 days of this, I can't do this. I can't. When they said, this is what we're going to do, we prepare for 3 hours. I said, I can't do this, right?
So let the takeaway be here, Cristina, that in the hands of a qualified guide, instructor, mentor, educator, teacher, we discover things about ourselves that we were not aware of.
Right. I had no idea. So we wrote in the tablet, which is thick like this, all our fears. I can't do this, I can't do that, I'll never make it, blah, 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 blah. And in 3 hours of concentration, I did it. And I kept those tablets. And the second thing that was one of the most important experiences, and this is kind of grace, I would call it, this is the grace of God that has been following me in amazing ways. When I first got, it was in Michigan, Lake Michigan, a nice hotel in Lake Michigan, this place. So they told me, go to room A in the basement. So I went to room A, and there was a mat, a yoga mat, that's it. And I said, oh, I don't do yoga or anything, but this huge man comes in with a stick, big stick, and says, lay down, face down. God knows. Do I know anything? So I lay down, face back. He stepped on me. I thought I was going to die from the pain, or that. I don't know what he was doing to me, but it felt okay. At the same time, it felt like, oh my God, so blah, blah, blah. And then after an hour, I forgot time, I know. He said to me, go to your room and relax until lunch. And I said, and so I go to my room, I lay down, and I start seeing all the abuse issues of my child, all the events, like a movie, sign by sign by sign by event. I was amazed. I said, what is this, right? So, of course, at lunch, I ran to Mark Lamb, that's his name, and I actually asked, I said, this is what happened. Could you explain what happens? He said, yes, all the memories are settled in the connective tissue. And I moved it. And you are releasing it. Okay. So what I discovered, that the body carries the burden of all your emotions that way. So I have worked with my body for the rest of the 30 years with him as he was in New York 20. And he, so that was a very, very important event in my life.
First of all, our chat box is chock-a-block with questions, so we're going to get to them in just a minute.
All right.
Rest assured, don't despair. We're going to get to your questions, but there are a couple of other preliminary points that I hope that I can touch on before we open this up for Q&A. What strikes me as I speak with you, as we do periodically, is that you have now become a very well-regarded counselor, therapist, facilitator for people following spiritual disciplines of one kind or another. And it's fascinating to me, coming from the Bhakti tradition, which is a highly personalist culture, that just having this image of a supreme being, a divine supreme person, Krishna, with his consort Radha, this extraordinary image of the yin and yang of creation in a celestial, beautiful, eternal realm where souls dwell in a loving, peaceful eternity, does nothing to erase the damaged or injured psyche that we've been living with throughout the course of this life. And I remember asking you one time, what's the most dangerous thing you've heard spiritual practitioners say to you? And your answer just blew me away. You said it's when they say we are not our bodies.
Yeah.
You know, the idea that this, which is such a fundamental teaching, not just in Bhakti, but every
spiritual path,
every tradition I can think of,
because we're going to leave the body. So actually, it is true that we are not the body.
But how easily, as
it's so misinterpreted, though.
Yes, and what an excuse it could become for abuse, for neglect,
right?
Indifference, right?
Yes.
For denying emotions, suppressing emotions.
Yes.
No, that's all the body.
It's all the body, and that comes also to this tendency to have a split between material and spiritual.
I talk about that if you would. How do you mean?
There is not, that split is false.
Oh, that spirit is good, matter is bad.
The body is bad, right? Mm-hmm. And chanting Hare Krishna, chanting the beats is good. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And so, but it's Krishna consciousness. So this is, it has to be practiced on a daily basis on everything you do in your life, with every relationship. It is a consciousness. It's not like every cell is in the body's consciousness, says the Bhagavatam. I don't know, I read it, but this stuck to me as I tried to understand, as that helped me as a therapist. So Krishna is in my finger, in my gut, is everywhere. It's in my heart, right? It's everywhere. So even though we are not the body, we are traveling with a whole bunch of spiritual energies. And we need to connect with that. That's the consciousness. And once we do that, it's not material anymore. You are in the world, but not of it. You are in the body, but you are connected to the spiritual potency, or at least try to.
Right.
By at least in the Bhakti, I thought what helped me the most, because we are where we are, and I'm not anywhere in any high level of anything. But what helped me the most when I'm in trouble, and I want to yell and scream at somebody I don't like, is ask myself a question: how can I serve this person? And it's like an immediate shift of consciousness. So that's, I found out, was a wonderful way to make me Krishna consciousness. Does that make sense?
It makes
Because
perfect sense.
they immediately the image comes. It's almost like a prayer without a prayer. How can I serve this person? Obviously, it's not by killing them or slapping them or throwing anger at them, right? And so this simple thing, I made it very practical, which is another thing that I find that devotees get lost in, tolerate, and a whole bunch of words. But where is the practice? Then you go yell at your husband or your wife and use manipulation or whatever it is. And so what, does that make sense? So in the practical way, it's almost like there is a split. I behave horrible or I don't care. I yell and scream, criticize. I do all of that stuff, right? And then I go chant.
Yeah, boy, oh boy, you're reading my thoughts here. Over the half century that I've been involved with my practice, traveling around the world and visiting people in different communities, that's one of the things I think that I've found most disturbing is settling into a kind of a pattern, this easy rhetoric where the vocabulary just becomes almost a memorized script. And there's really no going inside the very, very profound significance. I mean, words like karma and guna and samsara, and I mean, they're deeply profound ideas. They're not meant to be bandied about like candies. One further thought, and then I'd like to get to some of the questions that we have here. Listening to you over the course of the last few months in our sessions together, and I thought long and hard about sharing this with our guests here today, and I thought it would be the right thing to do. The agony of grief that I was feeling over my mother's death was, it came from two places. One was, as you're describing, there's this very clear material history that we come from, where emotions, feelings, events can be so dramatic, so traumatizing that they're suppressed, and they live in the cells of the body, and under the right trigger, they come back out again. Yeah. And then the other side of this, which you helped me to focus on, which was that person who played the role of your mother, that being who came into the world and gave you a mother's love. That person has now fulfilled the purpose for coming into this life, and now wish her well.
Yeah.
Wish her well, and to feel grateful that I was given someone who brought me into the world, who equipped me, for better or for worse, with the tools for coming to my own spiritual path.
Yeah.
For acknowledging the good in that relationship, as difficult as it was so often. And now that person has gone on. And you talked to me about, this was a tough one, because I've always had a good deal of anger toward my father for having left my mother. Never mind that he left me. How could you ever leave her? You rascal, right? So you said something to me that I took very seriously. You said, do you have any pictures of your father? Now, I won't bother turning the camera around, but my room, there isn't an inch of free space. I've got books and photos of family and friends. The whole room is filled with that. And after you asked me that, I looked, there wasn't one photo of my father. And you said to me, you must immediately go and put a picture of your father on your altar. Now, I don't know if you can see it now, but back here.
You emailed it to me.
I sent you a photo of it?
Yes.
Well, that's your doing up there, right on the back wall of my altar. That's a picture of me and my son and my father all together. And that helped me, Cristina, greatly to identify the bridge between the material and the spiritual.
Yeah.
So I really thank you sincerely for that. Let's get to one or two of our questions here. Let's see. Let's go to the top there. Boy, there's a whole bunch. The move in psychiatry from talk therapy or psychotherapy to medicine pills. I guess that would be psychotropic and neuroleptic pharmacology. In the 1980s, we talked and had a group, and then that became prescriptions.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on drugs? Do these mood enhancing prescriptions, Zoloft and Prozac, have a role to play in moving us toward a greater awareness of ourselves?
No, I don't think. I think that sometimes they're necessary, but awareness. This is what I learned from Peter Levine on my trauma training. It's not like I'm against the drugs, but, and even in Chinese medicine, they say, which is a natural medicine, and they see things a lot more holistic, that is, for a solution, you need to know what the issue is, right? So if I go to a doctor, I'm depressed, okay, here's Zoloft, go to sleep. The search of why am I depressed is killed by, does that make sense?
Yeah, I just wonder though.
Unless the person needs to be motivated to find out why am I depressed. And again, I think it's a matter of motivation, prayer, grace. I'm not sure why. I had a lot of grace because I kept on having teachers and people that came into my life to advance me to the next level of what I needed to do. But I also was I was relentless in my search, which also, so, I mean, I could have gone, Dr. Tershakovic never gave me a pill, thank God. He let me suffer in silence. But I am so happy, and I never asked for a pill. I wanted to know, of course, I was able to function. I had a job, a daughter, studying. So, but there are people that cannot function. Does that make sense? They become aggressive. They want to kill whoever is in
You're reading my mind.
And then you need to, you need to give them something until such a time. So
sometimes it is a chemical imbalance that can be addressed.
It's always a chemical imbalance, but they are, and we don't know enough. Like we are 0.0 in knowledge in everything, even though biology is the knowledge of these last 20 years in therapy. The last 25 years is the biology exploding in research. But we don't know enough, and so we don't know how to treat it. So if you want to function, well, then you need, it's either the pill or marijuana or whatever. Now they're legalizing it, because it calms you down. But in trauma, for example, Peter Levine will not treat somebody who, they have to be off marijuana for 3 months. because it detaches somehow of the sensations of the body, which are so important in order to guide you to what is the issue.
Fascinating.
So it's all very interesting, but we don't know enough.
There's another question. In addition to past trauma, right now we individually as well as a society are living in trauma, pandemic, economic, racial, political, and so on. How to process trauma as it is occurring? That's an interesting question. My situation was something going back to childhood. This guest is asking, how do we process trauma that we're surrounded by every day today, currently?
So by managing your nervous system well. So there is like the yogis know how to do this very well. If you do pranayama well, you will manage fear. There are 9 affects: joy, interest, fear, anger. They're all helpers. They manage for us to know what's wrong, startle, shame. And we need to be able to manage our feelings in a controlled way, not control of control, but in a normal person goes, I'm sad, I'm happy, it's undulating. It doesn't get stuck somewhere over there, or does that make sense? So the ability to know what you need, to know your feelings, to manage your feelings well, to stop and it's all in Bhagavad Gita, by the way, which is fascinating. To be aware of the tyranny of the urges, right? Which are all of these, well, I need to go have a drink, or that's not good. So how do you manage your negative feelings is essential. Essential. And then you don't get traumatized because you are resourced.
Yeah. Sometimes I muse on the idea that before anyone is allowed to earn a yoga teacher training certification, they should have at least 1 year of therapy.
They have to. Yes.
Why are you doing
because
this? What are you doing?
We are. Our feelings actually, the gut, the bacteria in the gut have their own brains, and there is 30% of them. We are almost guests in the microbiome system, and our gut.
We're a guest in this body. There's so much.
We're almost a guest in this body, and they have found out some very interesting things, right? Some of them make you fat, some of them make you aggressive, some of them cause Parkinson's. I mean, we are dependent on all of that, and so if we don't know how to manage our bodies health-wise, and Ayurveda is the science. I mean, it's nothing new. Ayurveda's doctors keep on saying you need 8 hours to take care of yourself, 8 hours to sleep and 8 hours to work. That's how they divide. So it is a matter of really managing your feelings, managing your health. Make sense?
Well, it does, and what sticks in my mind, and what you're reminding me of quite clearly is that the connections between the trauma that surrounds us, as this guest is asking about, and our response to that trauma so often is grounded in history. If we've had a troubled relationship with authority, let's say we had abusive parents or an abusive father, and authority was always something to be feared, we'd have one kind of reaction to a confrontation with the
Yes,
circumstances
yes.
of the world around us.
It's almost all about attachment. It's almost all about attachment to our primary caretaker. We can have a positive attachment, negative attachment, and that is like an imprint. And you see it in relationships all the time. You carry this to your husband, to your marriages, to your kids, everywhere. Ambivalent attachment to mom. One day she kisses you, another day she yells at you, right? So you find that in your relationships, you yell at your husband, one day you yell at your kids, one day you kiss them. You never know when. So you repeat that, because that's where children are very impressionable. That's the soup where they grow up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they do.
But not everyone's comfortable confronting that, it strikes me. I mean,
no, because you have to look at the shadow self. At the shadow.
The shadow self, you're saying?
Yes, this is a very Jungian concept. We all have a shadow self, right? And if one teacher said to me, what you don't know runs your life.
What you don't know runs your life.
Yeah. Like all the bacteria you don't know in your gut runs your life in a way. So what you don't know runs your life. And a lot of at least what I didn't want to know is that I was not a nice person. I thought, oh, I'm so nice all the time. And what therapy did for me is to reveal my ugly part, or so-called ugly part, and reach a point of acceptance to that, of consenting, understanding. So once you do that, there's nothing else to do in a way. And the fear is, oh, I have to look at this. But if you don't look at that, the ugly part shows up without you know, and then you wonder why my friends or my husband leaving me, or my friends, or losing my job, and all these things are happening because you begin, and almost subconsciously, to act it out.
For me, this stuff is fascinating. It's absorbing. It's informative, and I wonder why it is that so many people seem to have a hard time confronting the shadow, what you're calling the shadow.
I don't know.
I know mythologist Ursula Le Guin, in her book Wizard of Earthsea, talks about the hero there has to embrace the shadow, coming to terms with the thing that we fear most. This is straight up Joseph Campbell monomyth as well. Embracing the thing that you fear most.
Yes.
You realize you don't have to be afraid of this thing. It doesn't have to control you.
I was a philosophy student once, and one of the Kierkegaard, one of the things he said is, if you want to beat the devil, you have to kiss him in the mouth. And I thought, wow, let me do that. And so I started doing everything I was afraid of. And what I found out through experience is that I was afraid before I was doing the thing. In the middle of the thing, there's no time to be afraid. And after you look, I don't know why I was afraid of that. It's like, it's an illusion in a way. There's two kinds of feelings: primary, real fear. There is a tiger around and it's going to eat me up. And there is the secondary feeling that's from the scripts, which you could call Maya. They're not real. They're in your imagination.
Isn't there something dangerous, though, about dismissing something fearful by saying that it's not real?
If you know that it's a matter of education. It helped me to understand this is not real. It's an image I have, right? At least me. Maybe for some people, there is no book for everybody. There is no rule for everybody. That's why there is everybody. For me, there is no client. If I feel the client is so afraid to do that, well, I'm not going to tell him, gee, it's not real. You can't. But for me, it helped me to know, this is in my brain, right? That this is, I'm afraid of this. But you have to differentiate, differentiate what is really current reality, what is real. Like if I'm afraid to do my taxes, that's, that became, what am I afraid of? That's like a little not real.
Right. Would it be helpful to make a distinction between something that is totally unreal and something whose reality is only temporary?
Well, probably, if it helps you, if it's good for you and it helps you, in a way, what's important in life is to create and to live, to live in the quality world you want to create. More than anything else. And if you are able to do that, you are almost a step into transcendence, because you are guided by creation and truth and that kind of thing. And you're not bound by me, myself, and I, and the identity. So there is two things, the identity issues and creative. And how can you serve? What can I do for the world? How can I create something? How can I love something that I want to see it grow or manifest itself? So anything that has identity for me, anything around my identity, I'm afraid of this, is imaginary. That's material.
Okay. I remember
if you want to define
said
it.
something to me earlier today. You said, I'm paraphrasing, thoughts are the prophylactic of creativity, or the
Perception.
Of perception.
Yes,
So,
because thought is of the past. There's nothing new on thought.
You're blowing my mind here. I'm going to go to another question in the chat box. A guest says, my mother always told me since a young child, you know what to do. I never understood that her message was for me to trust myself and my intuitions.
Exactly.
Until she had died. This person says, how can we encourage more self-trust in our children and grandchildren? I have done it for myself just through experiences and my practices of awareness. That's a fascinating observation. You know what to do, her mother told her, and I never understood that message was for me to trust myself and my intuitions until she died.
Well, we're not trained to trust our intuition because we have rules, regulations, authority, do this, do that, go to school. I mean, I had to train myself to trust my intuition, like so many other kids in my, where I grew up and in my time and place. So how can you, the question is how you train kids?
Well, I think she had a particular interest here in encouraging children and grandchildren. Yes.
Well, the children learn what they live. So what do children need? The children need to be seen, to be heard, to be accepted, to be loved, to be touched. And we need to be mirrors of that. How do you know? How does a child know who he is? How? By the pattern mirroring him. Wow, you did this so well. Oh my dear, you're sad. You probably, what do you need? A hug? Boom. Does that make sense? So they begin to know, oh, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm this, that, and I can go to mom and I can receive love. Somebody understands me here. That's how you encourage. It's not about teaching them anything. No book reading, no nothing. It's about you actually spending time connecting to the child and really seeing him, perception, and reflecting that to the child so that he knows who he is from a loving source.
You know, it's fascinating that lately I've been reading biographies of the great Bengali avatar and Bhakti pioneer Chaitanya. And the more I read some of the early biographies, the more it strikes me that this is someone who was surrounded by love, surrounded by the love of his parents, surrounded by the love of the community around him in the town of Navadvip. And that made me reflect that my teacher, Prabhupada, was someone who was also deeply loved and supported by his parents. And it strikes me that there's a theme there that you're touching on. Not everyone has the great blessing of self-aware parents who are sufficiently attuned to themselves that they can express that love to their children. Many parents are unable to express emotion. They don't know how to encourage their children. I mean,
I come from that kind of family.
Yes.
You know, totally unable to connect or even understand anything, or even being negative with the comments or shame. And there are many people like that. So I get it.
You said something to me once that if you're feeling lonely or sad, hug yourself.
Yes.
And I remember thinking, that's amazing. How does that work? And you described to me that the body, the skin, doesn't make the distinction between whether you're being hugged by your mother or your father.
No. See, I'm putting my hand here and my skin is loving it. Right? And all the nerves are telling, oh, somebody loves me.
Ooh, that does feel good.
Yes, right? Yeah.
I'll tell you a secret because nobody's listening. Sometimes I go around with my hand on my heart.
Yeah.
Like this because the Paramatma, super soul feature of God dwells in the heart.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's my way of connecting with super soul.
Well, this is great. I do this in the morning. You know, I say this is Paramatma, my heart, and sometimes I do my liver and I say thank you for what you're doing. Let me connect with you. I mean, where do we give attention to? I mean, I have a therapist myself who's is all body centered, and what do? Touch your feet, right? Say thank you. You know, like it's amazing. Become perception, becoming alive. The ability to look at a tree and see it.
Oh boy.
Does that make sense? It's an amazing thing, but you have to pay attention, open up the senses of perception, and close a little bit the mental speculation part of us.
You remind me of a walk I went on with my teacher Prabhupada in London back in the mid-70s sometime. And we were in Hyde Park, and we were walking by some trees, and I said, what does a great yogi see when looking at a tree? Of course, I was talking about him, but he didn't want to take that credit. So he said, well, a pure devotee, meaning someone else, not me, but a real advanced soul, looks and sees not the tree body, but sees that there's a soul dwelling within that physical body of the tree.
Exactly.
And even going farther, within the heart of that soul dwells the super soul.
There you go. That's perception.
That's right. So not just seeing a tree, but seeing God standing there.
There is a certain devotee in Chicago. I may say his name, Rajiv, who actually has trees, and he has perceptions and talks to them, and they talk to him. And there is, I mean, it's amazing. It blows my mind, my heart, and everything else, because he's able to do that. He has that kind of perception.
We mentioned the Bhagavad Purana earlier, the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's a verse there that describes that to make spiritual progress, one first must begin to recognize divinity in the world around us, the phenomenal world that we're capable of seeing. If we can appreciate the sanctity of what we can see, then we qualify eventually.
Well, that's it. You got it. It's perception.
No.
And for that, we have to be very centered in our bodies. And appreciate, very, very centered in our bodies, our perception, our sensation. We have to be very familiar with the power of our body.
Yeah.
Our intuition, our senses, our perception.
There's a lot of information there in that physical.
Oh my God! It's everything is there. All the information you need for defense, for immunity, for illness is all in the body. But we don't listen too much, and we don't go to school for that.
Let me mention to our guests here today that you received a link to a download of a 2-page essay by a colleague of mine who is a practicing therapist, who describes the life of a young boy in India who began manifesting symptoms of what today we might call bipolar disorder or affective schizophrenia. There may be all kinds of terms for it. And this young man, had he been treated with psychotropic drugs, may not have grown up to become Ramana Maharshi, who is recognized as a great spiritual teacher. Yeah. And it reminded me of some of the Vaishnav saints of the past whose behavior, like Nityananda Prabhu, whose behavior was so antisocial that in today's parlance, they would have been seen as pathological.
Well, because those are labels by people who do not understand that level of being. There are different consciousness and levels of awareness in people. So that happens a lot with artists and geniuses like that the rest of us have no clue how to relate to them. I think it was Nietzsche who was found singing and hugging a horse and putting him in, because God knows, so that's possible.
Well, one of the things that Chaitanya used to do was hug trees.
Oh my God, there you are.
Sure.
See?
He saw Krishna there. Here's a question. Do you know the idea of spiritual bypassing? Some of what you were discussing sounds like that idea of spiritual bypassing. Can yoga ever be the cure for everything? And that is to say, in place of therapy.
Yes, if you really practice it with your entire body and not just by the movements.
Can you elaborate on that?
Let me see. I can go, I've been to yoga classes, right? I can go like this, right? But I'm not feeling my arm fully.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Because I'm not there. I'm out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there is so many movements inside my body. Does that make sense? And we need to slow down, and if we slow down and we begin to see, if you stand up, that's an exercise you could do, or lay down and say, okay, I'm going to wait until something in my body wants to move. See what happens. There are schools for that. I have a teacher from the Continuum, Mary Abrams, who I have worked with her for 17 years. It's amazing. Talk about intuition and body center, authentic movement, the Feldenkrais Institute, right? So there's a lot of practices, all the trauma therapies that teach how to, how to move with intention, knowing, not like this, like disassociated, but feeling the arm move. Makes sense?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that very often what is taught as yoga is very often just the thinnest veneer, that it's such a profound subject. And to use your terminology, this can either be this, or this can be,
this can be, oh my God, the Krishna is inside of me. The spirit, I'm feeling the spiritual energy, and that's ecstasy in a way.
So a lot is at the doorstep of the teacher. If the teacher is
you could find it anywhere. For me, I do something gyrokinesis, gyrotonics with a martial arts Chinese teacher, and it's totally amazing how the flow of energy so it's in the body. So all the martial arts, but it depends on the teacher. It depends on the teacher.
I have someone here who says, isn't it dangerous? I think they're talking about listening to your own inner voice, trusting that inner voice. Psycho killers and sociopaths also listen to their intuitions, and they do horrible things. Well, it's a legitimate question. How do we differentiate between healthy intuitions and the workings of an unhealthy imagination?
Well, you could say that about knives.
About what?
Knives.
About knives. Yes.
Yes.
Right. A knife can be good or bad depending on who's using it.
Yeah. So dangerous. Listening to your intuition in the right way is never. I don't think it's any. This is a dangerous place. It could be dangerous, but for you personally, to think that, to have fear, that's the question I would ask. Is it that because it's dangerous, you're not going to train yourself to listen to your intuition because you think you will end up like a psychopath? Or,
Right. So
that's a personal question. Yeah. So then fear becomes more important than your intuition, or bigger than you, or your intention.
Yeah. I think one of the things I've learned from you lately is how easy it is to intellectualize something, to rationalize an excuse for not addressing it.
Yeah.
Or, finding a reason for shying away from the very thing that we need to confront in order to make forward movement.
Yeah. because your intuition will tell you you are dealing with a psychopath quicker. Then,
Okay.
you know?
So if I'm giving into this unhealthy image that I have of myself, and I use that as a pretext for not becoming something more.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I mean, there's so much that we could talk about here. You sent me a quote. May I read this? This is from Bert Hellinger. Now, I believe Bert Hellinger passed away last year. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And you
That's
studied
September.
family constellation therapy with him. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So here's a quote. Many people want to save their parents through love. Many parents want to save their children through love. It doesn't work. The most painful feeling that a person can feel is when the deepest love comes to the surface. That's the most painful feeling. And it is always accompanied by a sense of total powerlessness, a sense of being at its mercy. The solution to this is to give into it and allow oneself to be held. There again, that concept of being held. One must trust everything to a greater force, a force unknown to us. Then superficial worries cease. I'm hoping you can unpack that a little bit for us. There's a lot in there.
The way that I have experienced that, and this is where the merging from spiritual to my psychology has merged, is that I feel held. I feel actually held by Prabhupada. I mean, he, from the beginning, without knowing him, he appeared to me. And people say, you know, in dreams, but I feel held by, and how this feeling became stronger the more I have meditated through my body, the more I have slowed down, the more I had released scripts from my body, the more I'm silent, the more I listen to my heart and my intuition. And I know, the more I have done family constellations or participated, because in family constellations, I depend on perception that doesn't come from me. I don't know what I'm doing in family constellations in a way.
Can you give us a brief overview of what the constellation entails?
Yes. For example, it's you know, there is and there's scientists that know this also. So if anybody's interested, we could, you know, refer the kind. But what happens is you step in a morphonological field in constellation that a person goes with a problem, and instead of you talking about it, we have representatives represent the person, or mom and dad, or whatever, whoever it is that the issue is. And these people begin to move and feel things that belong to the family of this person, right? How they do that is an amazing thing to watch and to connect with. And how do I know it's true? Because that client or that person begins to cry when he sees the picture. It recognizes immediately what's going on. Does that make sense? And from that picture, images may come to my mind. Like, for example, I remember one time a picture came that I had to give this couple of there that was in the field a glass of water. I mean, if you think about it, that's the craziest picture that I could have gotten, right? Why? A glass of water that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But I followed it. I went to the water fountain got a glass of water, and I gave it to the woman there. And she started crying. And that brought a whole bunch of stuff out oh, this is what happened at my wedding. Did I know that? No idea. Make sense? Incidents like that have given me the grace of being with this great power and almost saying, we're doing the constellation together. I'm just having fun. Thank you for the images. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm fine with it. Make sense? There's somebody else running the show.
Yeah. Well, I'm relating to the times when you've walked me through that exercise. And I'm going to relate what happened to me to a question that's in the chat box. If we wake up to this perception and to the messages of our body, does that not put us more in the body concept?
Of course not, because the body is not a concept. Every cell in the body is intelligence.
Okay.
Spiritual. Your body, in a way, you spiritualize your body.
Yeah. Boy, this is a rough one. I mean, you and I share a certain familiarity with the Bhakti yoga community. And it's part of the ethos of that community to differentiate ourselves from the body. The body is all that is temporary. It's what is miserable. It's what causes us problems. It's something to be moved away from. And what you're describing is revolutionary in that you're talking about moving deeper into it. And yet I can tell from my own experience that if you permit yourself to do that, there are things that get revealed that you'll never understand otherwise.
And then it would be easy, because I'm an older person that's preparing, my future. I can see I could die any moment. And it's so good because I can leave my body happily. Because I have discovered what's not my body inside my body. And therefore I feel held by that. Does that make sense?
It's revolutionary. It makes sense. It's also in some respects counterintuitive to the kind of party line that people are exposed to in ashrams and yoga studios and so on, where very often it's leave all of that aside, dismiss all of that. It's becoming calm by allowing thoughts to go away, not going deeper inside them.
But thoughts are not going to go away.
Right.
And thoughts are Maya.
Yeah. I wonder whether, sometimes worry that the yoga culture in America isn't unleashing on society a class of more relaxed, self-aware psychopaths.
I agree. It's like I see it so, in so many ways, how a wife will say, oh, well, I'm praying, so I have no time to cook for my husband because now I'm doing the altar. So it's almost using, I'm not the whatever, with tendencies that are aggressive, and the same thing with the husband, with the wife, but the book says, and using knowledge like a hammer to hurt somebody else. So it's usual, unfortunately.
Well, you're from my experience, one of the few people I know who's managed to find the points of tangency between millennial teachings, such as we acquire from Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, other texts. And the vocabulary and concepts of contemporary family therapy and psychotherapy, I think it's fascinating, because if you do that, if you look through that lens, then there are concepts in the Gita that are absolutely ideal expressions of human psychology.
Well, the whole thing between Arjuna and Krishna is a therapy session.
Yes, yes, it is.
Hmm?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Hey, I mean, it's totally amazing how, Arjuna begins, hey, I'm looking at what? Do I have to find my grandfather? Hey, excuse me.
Yeah, the thing that he feared most was the thing that he had to do.
Right.
And he feared it because he was, I think, working from an incomplete picture of himself.
Exactly. And so this is a process that is a wonderful process of understanding that when you do something out of service, at least I'm making it simple. I'm sharing just what it helped me, right? Like this doing by not doing took me years of, what the hell is this? Doing. I'm doing this, Maharaj, I'm doing this. How come I'm not doing it?
We're not the
doing
doers.
it. I'm doing
That's
it.
right.
Huh?
I'm holding this. How am I not holding this?
Or am I not holding? Do you know how many years I wasted on that question?
What are you talking about? Is my pen? I'm holding my pen. How can you tell me I'm not?
Well, I know, because see, the mind can never solve it until eventually, in progressing with my own body center and body work and all that stuff, and I began to say, how can I serve? I got it.
You make me very curious, Cristina. Thoughts of suicide, depression, the darkness. Does anyone ever come to you because they feel good?
Yes.
Does anyone come to you saying, I'm worried, I'm feeling too good, help me out here?
What happens is sometimes friends that have been with me for a while, they do call. I'm having a great time, and we can share. Mm-hmm. Because when you have this journey with people, it's not like client and therapy. It becomes a deep bond of discovery for both. Because I'm discovering something for myself. So there is a deep friendship in, and it's a friendship that's not needy. Because part of it's and so sometimes I get calls or things that share the good news or the steps forward that people have taken, and it's such a joy to hear, how things going and doing and everything else. So yes, it's not all suffering.
That's good to know. Cristina, I can't thank you enough for the time that you set aside to be with us here today. There's so much more that we could discuss. I hope you'll agree to come back sometime. This is a discussion that deserves more time, more space. And I was able to get to a number of the questions in the chat box, but there are a lot that we just don't have the time to get to, and maybe we can do that next time as well.
So I want to thank my wonderful friend Sita Devidasi from Spain, and she helped me so much. She's like we studied Bhagavad Gita together. I've been to Spain, and she helped me with what is it that devotees do that need more help in therapy. So I want to thank her, and Shivram and Sweta from Chicago who also share some of the issues that devotees are dealing with. So I want to thank them
And
for their contribution to this meeting.
yes, well, this is what we try to do. You're helping us fulfill the mission we set for ourselves 16 years ago when we started these Gita wisdom gatherings. That is to surface the points of intersection between wisdom that is from thousands of years ago with best practices of the world we live in today. How can we begin to see that transcendent meaning behind things in a language that people can understand? And I think that's what you've done for us today, is to help us see that there is a currency, there is a dialogue between ancient concepts of the self beyond this world and the research that's being done into the workings of the mind and the psyche. So thank you very much for that. Just for all of you who have joined us here today, a reminder that we are a monthly gathering at this point. Our guest next month, help me remember here, Anuradha. Elsie Mayo, thank you. Yes, on is that March 20th, I believe. Elsie is a very well regarded and loved consultant to Fortune business companies. And she will be speaking on the notion of yogis in the boardroom. A lovely idea. And in months ahead, we have Ian McCaig will be our guest. Ian is the designer and storyboard artist of the Star Wars films. Ian will be talking about storytelling as a path to self-awareness. I think you will love him. He's an absolutely bright, luminous star in the firmament of my life, and I think you will enjoy him as much as I do. And other guests as well, coming up with all kinds of interesting subjects. So once again, we are gitawisdom.org, and if they go to /events, will they see the calendar there?
They will.
gitawisdom.org/events.
And they can also sign up for our newsletter.
And you can sign up for our newsletter. Thank you very much for that reminder as well. We are listener sponsored. Feel free to avail yourself of a contribution if you wish through PayPal or what's that other thing called? Venmo, yes, at joshua@strmedia.com. Krishna Lila, Cristina Casanova. Thank you so much for sharing with us your insights into the points of confluence between our various selves. Critically important subject. And to all of you, I wish you a very pleasant weekend, and try to stay safe out there. And we'll hope to see you again next month for our next Gita Wisdom gathering. So be well and have a good weekend. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Gita Wisdom. For more information, please visit gitawisdom.org.